Cameo Radio. Hey, and welcome to Cameo Radio. I'm here in the studio with Danny Honeywine.
Hi.
And this episode is episode number 11, Honor the Movement.
Yeah, honoring the movement.
Honoring the movement. And I think that's a really good thing to do because we're looking at a lot that's happening today. So without any further ado, let's get into it. And I think my first question really is, where is the convoy headed next? Is the convoy just trucks, or is it more? Does it stand for something deeper? What do you think, Danny? Do trucks just represent truckers? Or is it more than just truckers?
Well, I think it's more. Undoubtedly. I think if you ask somebody and they say that it was just about trucks, I don't think you should listen to that person. I think they're out of touch.
Right.
I think they don't really know what's going on.
No. A lot of people say that the truckers were fighting against the mandates, the vac passes at the border and all this sort of stuff. But was it mandates for all people? I'm kind of thinking so. You know, that was probably the trigger, the catalyst.
I think so. You know. Sure. I mean, nurses went through this just before the truckers went through it. But nurses don't have large vehicles to convoy across the country to plug up the capital.
Right. And disrupting that whole thing disrupted the supply chain.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a meme that went around with a truck and it was a weapon. And it, in a way...
the meme and it's a gun and it comes out with a honking horn.
In a way, it kind of became that. A symbol.
It did become a symbol, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. And that's the convoy symbol in a lot of ways. So there's other groups that have emerged throughout this as well. And we're looking at masks on students in schools. So that's a whole lot of parents that speak about that. You're a mother and I'm a father. So we've got quite a few views on that.
Yeah, there's professionals, firefighters.
Oh, yeah.
There's all sorts of groups. I mean, anybody who has a mask exemption. This has been going on, right? I mean, anybody who thinks that this is about trucks, I say they're out of touch because I'm like, well, it's been going on for a year and 3 months.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of people that have lost their jobs. And how far does that go? You know, if you're listening to this and you've been impacted, we want to hear from you as well. Because it's big. In our community, it's huge. There's nobody that hasn't been touched. The nurses is a great point, like you say, Danny. It's a really good one. Mm-hmm. So the convoy started in the media because of vax passport requirements for truckers.
Yeah, I think that's something that they grabbed onto.
I think so too.
Right, because
it was a trigger event.
Yeah, because if the media or the mainstream narrative says that this convoy is about mask mandates and vaccine passports, then all that they have to do in order to make it go away is to say, well, we've lifted mask mandates and vaccine passports, which they were going to do anyway.
And that's what's happening. It's part of the agenda.
Yeah.
They can't keep it on forever.
No, it's all just fits right into the narrative, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I don't think that it was ever really, truly moved by that. I think it was moved by this call to action for all people, really.
For all people. So honoring that movement going forward, it is for everybody. And I don't think that it's something that can just fizzle out. Although, if it is disarmed by the lifting of mandates and vax pass requirements, but that's also a narrative because they're not being lifted in places like school. We'll get into that as we go forward a bit more. But the convoy, and that's for everybody. That's really the movement. Was it vax passports specifically? Was it about liberty? Was it about freedom? Was it a freedom convoy? The word on the street says that it's a unity convoy now. The word unity has really started to take over. Mm-hmm. There's some fascinating aspects to that because there's so many different movements and so many different affected groups of people. Parents, teachers, professionals, truckers, everybody. How many people have lost their jobs? Senior citizens, all the rest, who can't. Some people just can't take the vaccine. Can't go to the public pool, library.
Yeah, I mean, I think even going back as so far as when this began, it was already over.
Yeah, it
And
was.
we'll talk about that as well later on.
That's coming in. That is definitely coming up. So, who said it was about masks and passports, right? Canada's public safety minister, Marco Mendicini, said it wasn't about freedom and that the truckers had distanced themselves from the convoy.
Okay, but hold on though.
Right.
When Marco Mendicini,
It doesn't sound right.
When Marco Mendicini says the truckers, like, let's be clear who he's talking about. He's talking about the board of the Truckers Association, and this is how it works in all industries. There's an association that ostensibly represents some sector. Now, whether or not your business or your operation is part of that association, it doesn't matter. He's referencing the Truckers Association, which without looking up the stats of that organization, I would assume there's probably 9 board members.
Yeah,
so he's
likely.
not talking about guys who drive the trucks or the women who drive the trucks.
Or anybody in the
He's
movement.
just talking about the board of the Truckers Association.
Right. And that makes sense. So that kind of explains why he would say that.
He's not lying.
He's not lying. It's
He's
not
saying
a lie.
the truckers.
It's a distortion.
Yeah, it's distortion.
But that is built on another distortion that is... Oh, the whole thing's just so skewy. I don't like their narrative. It's just silly. So are they trying to control that narrative? And...
That's what a narrative does. Anything that isn't, if it is a narrative, it's about control.
Right. And they're just playing their hand into that.
Yeah, if somebody's running a narrative, well, then they're then they have an agenda.
They have an agenda.
And if they're not telling you what their agenda is, then you're left in the dark.
Right. They could...
But they tell us what their agenda is.
in a subversive way that not very many people can hear, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could go look up the agendas.
We had
online.
the Big Lie, the episode The Big Lie, where David Attenborough's little brother showed us a lot.
Yep.
Oh boy, he has a worry with words. So part
now
of their agenda is, like we were saying earlier, they're going to lift the illegal mandates and say to everybody, look,
You're
you've
welcome.
won. You're welcome. We've given you back your freedom.
You got your freedom back.
Yes, very nice.
Your freedom, your rights.
So, but we still have to, like we were saying earlier, disclose the status of a vaccine to get your kid into school, into public school.
Yeah, nothing has changed there. So when I go to register my daughter for programs in the school district, I have to disclose her vaccination status. Nothing there has changed.
Nothing's changed. It actually hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed.
No, it's still not so
And
good.
that's now come for the professionals. So yes, perhaps we will not have the little QR code thing on our phones, but medical professionals, health professionals still are going to be required to disclose their vaccination status as of March 24th. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed.
And like I personally am absolutely shocked at the systematic dismantlement of our healthcare system.
Well, the disclosure of that information being forcing or coercing health professionals to disclose that information, it undermines the entire integrity of that system itself. And so it makes it into a farce. It's
absurd.
It's absurd.
It's completely absurd. Absolutely. And without a healthcare system, Canada has been just a really great place to live because of our healthcare system. It's been not the top of the list, as far as I can tell, for a lot of people. Universal healthcare. It's been just eroded and it's not so universal. And I know. I
have my thoughts about universal healthcare, but...
It was always part of the agenda, wasn't it?
This was part of it.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that's really something. So all of these professionals are being required to disclose their vaccine status. We're having to disclose it about children so they can attend public school, so that people in business can maintain their business licenses, all the rest. It's absurd. People are basically being threatened. Yep. Force, fear, intimidation, threat, coercion. That's power.
Yeah. And then so we ask, well, is this what the public wants?
Well, I don't think so, or we wouldn't have these movements of people, all of these different independent, autonomous movements with leaders that pop up and disappear differently. It's very interesting. Somebody one day will seem to be in charge, and the next day they're not.
I think it's time that we legitimately start recognizing that there are two publics.
It is very interesting.
It's just
There's
time
a
to
divide
acknowledge
in it.
it.
Yeah.
So when we say, is it what the public wants? Everyone goes, huh?
Well, and the public's divided.
Huh?
Oh,
We don't know.
I don't know.
We don't know. And then we go back to, majority this, majority it, and it's a whole.
Who are you polling?
It's a cesspool. It's an absolute cesspool.
It's chaos. It's
so-
anarchy.
Yeah. So what is it if it's not really, if it actually has nothing to do with the public, because now there's sort of these two
Well, it's
groups
obviously
in society, then
more
it's
agenda.
something else.
It's
right?
more agenda.
It's the agenda.
Or
It's
the narrative.
yeah, the narrative takes us through the agenda.
Yeah. The narrative lets them work their agenda. Whoever they are, whatever its agenda is.
It's agenda. Anybody's agenda.
And we know that there's digital ID coming. We know that there's social credit scores coming. You know what? So it's 2027 and my electric car won't start because my Facebook profile is somehow offensive. These is other memes that I've seen. The terrible predictive of the future. That's not the one I want to go into. And so you've done some really great investigation, and so have I, into digital IDs.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people who are looking at that. And we've spoken about it in other episodes. COVID, confirmation of vaccine ID.
It was a test.
It was a test.
Yep.
And now we've got things like the Queen's Platinum Jubilee coming up.
Yeah, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. There may or may not be a bank holiday and all this. These are just things that again. How does, if I have an agenda, like if I'm like I want to get from A to B to C to D, and I got to get from A to B to C to D, and I got to run through that, and I got to get you on board with my agenda. I have to tell you how to get there. And that's all the narrative is. So I am just looking at it and I go, okay, so here we go.
Those convinced. Right?
Those convinced, right? How do we convince the people to get from A to D? And what is that? Well, we just finished Agenda 21.
Pretty much.
We completed it.
That's what's
done.
happening, yeah.
And so it's, as soon as COVID was out, as soon as this, right, it was kind of coronavirus at first, and then it started to coalesce and form into COVID.
And it did what it was designed to do, and it transpired over the course of a couple of years.
Yeah, it solidified. And then by 2021, we were right there on the agenda. 2021, check, completed. So as soon as the narrative of COVID started running, it was already done. And so we're sitting here talking about masks and vaccine passports, we're already behind the 8 ball, because the agenda now is Agenda 2030.
Yes, it's 2030. And so they're going to utilize the population through a narrative in divisive manners, because there's kind of two movements happening all in one. It's very confusing to people. They've already begun it. It's already begun.
It began in 2021.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're a year
Into
out, right?
Yeah.
So the movement that represents, the resist of it is a year behind, which isn't a bad thing. It's just, if we're not aware of that,
So
if
like
the movement itself isn't aware of
we have
that,
to catch up.
then that's a disservice to the
Yes.
movement. So that's my message, is we need to be looking at Great Reset.
And then
If
we
you
know
want
the
to,
Great
if
Reset's
we
there.
want Great Reset, then we just follow the narrative. If we don't, we have to create our own narrative, or a new narrative, or a new,
Not even a narrative.
a point, a new
something.
objective. Like, what's our
An
objective?
alternative, maybe?
And we saw this with Occupy. Like, I was involved in Occupy.
I remember that.
I
Yeah.
participated. I went down there, and the real challenge that we faced, and like this is my generation, just like the peer-to-peer generation. The objective was unknown.
Yes.
And so it kept the momentum would start, and the enthusiasm was there, but the objective was unclear.
Unclear objective, and it fizzled.
And so it fizzled.
Yes, just like a lot of movements.
Just like many
Yellow
movements.
Jackets, was it? Or what were they? The trucking
I never
things?
really followed.
There's been a lot of them, and it seems like there's this energy in society for people to do something, and these things pop up, and everybody gets on it, and they get it out of their system, and then something comes along, like these mask mandates being lifted, and people go, oh, there's the relief I was looking for.
Yeah.
And they fall out. So those convinced that it's only about masks or vax passports will fall out of the movement.
Yeah.
And that is the objective. Quiet the rabble. You know.
Yep. But
And this thing was all done.
we're gonna see
How many?
intense pressure through food prices.
Oh, yes.
Gas prices.
Huge.
Hyperinflation.
Hyperinflation, and now they're
Right?
going to start the next big relief they're going to give us from the crunch that's coming from that is going to be a universal basic income,
UBI,
debt relief, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so
absolutely, it's just phenomenal. And yeah, fuel prices. I don't even want to do an episode.
$1.96.9 today.
It's crazy. It's going to be $3 here pretty soon.
Yeah.
So, welcome to Agenda 21. We can keep following that narrative, or we could look at some alternatives. And, you know, we could circle these issues forever, but that's part of the narrative. Here's a problem. Circle that forever, and it just distracts people.
Oh, yeah.
And there's all these little solutions that pop up to something that's actually a non-issue. What we really need to be doing is honoring the movement, which is in people and in us.
Yeah, and so right before we got started, we were sort of going on about honor because the title of the episode is honor. So we looked it up and like, let's get back to the etymology of honor. Honor is high respect, as that's shown for special merit, recognition, or esteem. And so if we want to honor this movement, we have to hang a badge on it and say, it did achieve something.
Oh, it certainly
Don't
has.
forget. Why if I'm coming out of, you know, we give veterans the pins and the lapels and the badges. Why? To remember it.
Yes.
Right? To remember what happened and what it was. And so how do we do that? How do we actually create something out of this movement? And that's, I think, what you and I are working on.
That is a huge
the other
objective.
People that are coming into this more solidified, more grounded approach to, you know, the movement of free spirits is what it is. It's a very free-spirited movement.
It really is.
Watching people get in trucks and drive whole families across the country.
Oh, I saw a video just a couple of days ago. A fella, they sold everything, bought an RV, and because it is worth it.
Yep.
It's worth it because it's bigger. And they're not truckers. They're a retired couple.
Sure.
That's great. I love it. This is amazing. So, looking at today's world, looking at those narratives, looking at these stories, Agenda 21, these things they spin, right? The narrative, Marco Mendicini and all the rest, the mainstream media. I think we can say we've confirmed we live in a lawless state.
Yeah, and I used to be really kind of, you know, it would make me and it would pull at me and I would be like, I don't want this. And you know what? I'm like, just let them.
Just let them.
Just let them.
Well, they prove themselves.
They just let them do their
clown
thing.
Show.
The clown show will prove itself.
It does.
And it will pop up. And the clowns will reveal themselves.
Oh, they always do.
So let them. And we have to stop trying to fight against it. We have to let it. Because we can't deny that this great reset isn't happening. It is happening.
It's admitted. The
choice for us is, do you want an alternative? And if we try to deny and say, no great reset, this can't happen, it doesn't change anything.
No, that doesn't work.
The only thing we can do is say, this is happening. It's absurd.
Are you going to participate?
We're going to do not even more. Are you going to participate? We're going to do something different.
Something different. Would you like to participate in that?
Would you like to participate? As if we just say, would you like to participate in this nebulous, right? We end up like Occupy, and like then we've got trucks parked at Parliament for 8 months, and and what do you want? What is your objective? And everyone's like, well, we got the masks.
We get the masks
Maybe it's
off.
this other small thing and this other small thing, and we just we never get anywhere.
Well, and that's the thing. A lot of people are fighting against what they see as a restrictive system, an oppressive system. They want it to change. Nobody is able to competently articulate an alternative. But there are some people in the movement who can. Chris Sky, the controversial figure that he is in some circles, makes a really good point. We need to be united under a banner of unity, of leaderless, people.
I mean, I agree and I disagree. I do think that leaders exist. I think
They pop up naturally.
It's irrelevant to say there's no leaders, but there are leaders.
No.
Like, I'm a leader, you're a leader,
Yeah.
Chris Sky is a leader.
Yes, he is.
There are not no leaders. What we don't need is politicians.
No, or people that claim...
not need politicians.
Or people that claim authority over others.
Yeah, like, who do you lead? Well, I'm a leader. Of who?
Of who?
Who are you representing?
Who do you represent?
Like, naturally and emergently.
Yes.
And who is it? Like, what is it?
Who is it that you're assisting, and how are you leading a charge? How are you demonstrating to those around you who would say, show me?
Yeah, exactly.
Show me
Absolutely.
what you mean.
Yeah.
And that's like you were saying earlier, we are working on something. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get to that.
Lots of people are working on things. Yeah, exactly.
But this brings us into our midpoint of our show, where we have, what is this? It's like a trailer or something from the Not So Real Life Network.
Yeah, it's an episode of Famous for the Wrong Reasons.
Ooh. And that's the stuff that, like you were saying, you just have to let it.
Yeah, it belongs in the Not So Real Life Network. Like, this is what's happening. You can't say that it doesn't exist or fight against it or try to tell the person that they can't, because you can't.
You can't. Let them do the thing. The clowns will reveal themselves. Yes. The corruption will reveal itself. Yes. It continuously does. Sit back. I guess enjoy this little blip, and we will be right back.
This is Cammy McFullsend in the newsroom here at the new HQ. We've got a special news bulletin. We've received a call from the dark side. Let's stay tuned and rattle that one out.
It's Brad calling. Do you want to help me understand what's going on?
I need you to follow your own rules. That's it.
In what capacity, Mr. McSorley?
Well, if you don't know what those are, you should quit.
I'm just not understanding about how we do business here.
You guys did a lot of things wrong. I am waiting for letters from you guys. The CRCC has told me that you're supposed to...
How else can I help you?
Can you send me a letter? Because I haven't had
Nope.
any contact. You're not sending a letter?
We're not sending a letter, no.
Let's put it this way, Brad. You are a servant.
Yep, I agree with you. We have taken steps to send registered mail to you.
Can you send me a letter?
We're not sending a letter, no.
You are a servant.
Yep, I agree. When you conduct yourself in an appropriate manner, we'll tell you what you want to hear, people like you.
Stop talking.
I wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank you. If you'd like me to clarify anything, I'm happy to do that.
We're not sending a letter, no.
You are a servant.
And the letters have been sent.
If that's the case, then great.
People like you. You can be a very, very difficult person to deal with, but I'm belligerent to my office.
You are a servant.
I don't understand.
Servant.
Yeah, I just want to get my point across.
You phone me and then speak over me. It's very rude.
Get over it.
You should get over it. You're the servant.
Right? I'm willing to listen. And nothing's changed in that regard. You know that because I told that to you. But I'm belligerent to my office. If you don't remember, that's fine. We told you. And if not, I'm happy to go through that with you again.
Right. Okay.
Perfect. Was there anything else?
Don't let your guys break the law anymore, man. Protect people.
Yeah.
And
we do our job. We do our job. But I'm also not here to be shit on.
Well, I'll just tell them that that's what you said.
Perfect.
We intercepted that communication from Sergeant Bad McKinon of the RCMP. This has been another news update.
Well, welcome back to the show after that. That was pretty good, but...
I'll put it this way. It's nice to be back to the Real Life Network.
Oh my God, yes. And you're here on Cameo Radio on the Real Life Network, hosted on Podbean. And yep. I just am like, okay, currently hosted on Podbean.
Well, we'll see if they can maintain.
We might get deplatformed, you never know. But,
is it time to start looking for justice?
It's like the bell has rung.
So, obviously, the mandates were never constitutional. I mean, the Canadian Constitution is a joke, like, to begin with.
Right, so how can we deal with any of this?
How can we deal with it?
Through a corrupt system. Yeah. We're going to take it back to court, or what? Mm-hmm. Oh, it's just absurd.
Right, we look at, Action for Canada is trying to serve notice, and they're drumming up these class action lawsuits, and on it goes. How long does it take? Will it be 2030 by the time we see, quote, justice?
Oh, and justice by then will be the fruition of their agenda through their narrative.
Yes.
ugh, and I don't want anything to do with any of it.
Not
It's
happening.
just dirty.
Yeah.
It's just dirty. So we can't really deal with it by going through that system. Let them play that out. But we don't think we have a lot of options. We're convoying for it. There's a movement pushing for it.
It's almost like the glass ceiling for a lot of the movement becomes, well, we've tried everything and this is the best system we've got, so we need to use it.
Right.
And once you break through that glass ceiling and you realize it's not the only system,
It's not.
and it's not the best system,
It's not the best. And
then
it's-
you can open up this whole world of exploration into new ideas that are recovery solutions.
Yes, recovery solutions, and that's the important part. And some of these things on the other side of the glass solution ceiling aren't new.
No.
They're very old. Like, how many
yeah.
people did it take to establish the United States?
12 people.
Right.
12
And they
people.
established it. It was already happening. There was already all kinds of tradition there.
Yeah, of course. Like, here, what tradition does it come from? It goes back even further. What's the largest ecclesiastic body and where did it come from? Well, the body of Christ, the living body of Christ, Christianity, one Christ.
And how many disciples in total? How many of them were there?
12.
12. There was
Right?
12 of them. And that's the Last Supper, the
Last
typical.
Supper, yeah.
And that the Last Supper represents, I've heard, the end of blood sacrifice. It was the last one.
Should have been.
It's supposed to have been.
And in a little small, like a much more smaller regional little example in my own life is the establishment. And so these are all establishment states, right? So 12 is how you establish, and it's right in the name. The estates, establish.
Establish,
12
yes.
people establish something. So even in the co-op that I was involved in, it was established by 12 members.
Right, 12. It's like the magic
12
number.
members. It's a magic number.
Absolutely.
It has to do with establishment.
Right.
Estates.
So was it establish?
It's the estates.
I love it. I mean, it's just,
And what's
it's
an
plain as
estate?
day.
What's an estate? It's an etheric state.
An etheric, the establishment of an etheric state.
Yeah.
So the movement is already there. The people are already there.
Yeah.
They're trying to establish themselves
Yes.
in a government that won't allow it.
It's not going to happen
It's
in there.
not going to happen in there. No.
Just rest assured.
Like, we just heard the corruption. It's not good.
No.
I'm not going back in there ever again. So, the United States of America, the largest ecclesiastic body, the disciples of Jesus. And then in your life, the cooperative, you're part of,
yeah.
right? And that's really something. Yeah. So, really,
What have we learned, right? Like, what
doesn't
have we
take a lot of
learned
people.
as a species? Yeah, we've learned as a species, it's up to people
It's up to
to
people.
find justice. And what is justice?
Just
it's
us.
the establishment of a state,
Yes.
right? And what is a state? Well, it's a state of being.
A state of being.
A
An
new
etherical
state of being.
Yes.
right?
A new story.
A new story.
Yes, a new way and all of that. So it's up to just us. And it doesn't have to be very many of us to establish the framework from tradition. And so tradition's interesting because that is referred to then as the providence of something. Where does it come from?
Does it have providence?
Does it have providence or did you just make this
Did
up?
you just make this up right now? Because I don't believe you.
Yeah, so where does it come from?
Where
And
does
if
it come
people
from?
can point in history, it's very easy for people to go, oh, okay. And it establishes that idea.
Not only that, but it has an actual existence in the ether.
Yes, it's not being created.
Yeah.
It
It
is
is.
traditional
It
already.
exists,
It
yeah.
exists. It's
Yeah.
not being created. It's not being cultured.
Yep.
Ugh.
Cultured, yeah. Yeah, because that's the flip side of it, right? We can look at tradition or culture.
Yeah, that's a good one. And so like examples of that, United States of America already existed. 12 people established it from concept. And so is it the concept of culture or tradition? They came from tradition.
Absolutely.
And they
came from the tradition of the 12 disciples.
And there was a
what
need.
It was.
There was a
There was a need.
There was a need. They were at war.
Yep.
They had something to push off. There was a catalyst. And so
Typically,
we've
really.
had these trigger events, these catalysts. Look, they're giving us a reason.
Yeah.
It's our opportunity.
And that's what this is. The
If
door is opening, and rest assured, the door will close.
It will close.
The door will close. The door will close. And if you're not through the door,
Oh,
it's
ooh. You can't kick that door off. That's not fun.
it's not going to be a go back situation because we're dealing, and this might be the scary part, because what we're dealing with is a no return scenario because we're dealing with
Oh, yeah.
human genetics.
Yes, you can't just delete stuff and think you're going back. Oh, I'm just going to hit the, Control Delete and reset this
Yeah.
thing. Control, Z, Control
And
Z.
these are questions that, we have some answers to. Frankly, I am not going to be the one to find those answers because I've already decided I'm not going in that direction.
No.
So to me, I say, I'm going over here now. Don't care.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious we're not going in that direction. I mean, look at us. Or listen to us. Or, that it is what it is.
Yeah.
So,
So let's talk about culture. What is that? What do you think about when you...
bacteria culture.
Yeah, I think of a bacteria culture, this thing growing, right? I also hear the word cult. Every time someone says culture, I'm like, oh, you mean cult?
It's in the word.
Ooh,
And so there's government culture, right? The little bacteria dish,
cult.
the little cult, and they give us rights.
They give us our RIGHTS, and everyone says,
those kinds of
I
rights.
want my rights.
Yes.
Give me my
Yes,
rights.
right.
And it's this part of this whole cult of subservience. It's a cult of subservience is what it is.
It is. Where you have masters and servants
Yeah,
and slaves. We're all indentured in servitude.
absolutely.
Or at least that's the hope they have.
And then what's the flip
Where
side
they
to that
are.
that we were talking about? It's people's tradition.
Yes,
Right?
it's true.
Customs, traditions, and then we have a beautiful word called rights.
Right.
RITES. So
Rights.
how do I get to something? How do I get to a place where I can do something, or I am qualified, or I am ordained to be able to do something?
Properly
It's-
vested.
It's through my right. The RITE.
And those are also, again, bringing it back to the word provenance. They come from somewhere. They're
come from
derived.
somewhere, yeah.
And they're innate to all people. So if we've got a government culture versus a people's tradition, the government culture seems to be based on ideology and control. It's being created. It's being cultured. People's traditions are based on providence and history and tradition.
Fact.
Grandma didn't do it for no reason. Yeah. Remember what Grandma taught? I had a great grandma. It was very, very nice. So government, do we need government or do we need governance? Government versus governance.
Primarily, we need governance. Governance is a state, right? To be in a state of govern.
To be
A state
in
of
control.
Control, right?
It is a state of control.
We're not in chaos. We're in a state of control.
We are in control.
Everybody wants that. Nobody wants to live in Mad Max.
Not particularly.
And that's where we're headed. If the door closes,
That's where we're going.
we
don't do
and we don't do anything, we're going to Mad Max.
We are
right?
on that. We are on that train.
Right? And so then the flip side of that is government. So to be controlled.
Yes, governmente, the control of the
Control
mind.
of the mind, right? Through the mind.
Yes, and so they control us through the mind with these stories, these cultured ideologies. And throughout history, if we look at ideologies, they can be very dangerous and have proven to be dangerous. Providence, fact. Learn from history or repeat
Learn from history
it.
or repeat it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So,
People.
Going back to that, so people have found governance, right? And they're pushing against this rule by these elite circles.
Well, hold on a second. We haven't found governance yet. We've found a spirit.
We found a spirit.
There's a spirit moving in the people, moving them towards something that they don't yet know what it is or
They don't have a
how
final destination.
to establish it yet. I think that's like pretty clear. But if we are clear that we do want to establish governance, right? New governance. If that is a goal,
Effective governance.
effective new governance, then that can be the goal. And then we don't have to say, well, we're going to have a great reset. It's like, well, we're going to have a great awakening. And that's all this stuff, this great awakening, this great resist, all of these other terms that are coming up. I love it because it gives something else for people to hold a torch to. Instead of just saying, we don't want the great reset, it's like, well, you don't get a choice. Like, that's what it's doing. So you can either go with it or you can do something else, but you better know what that something else is.
Yeah,
Or
and
you're
that's
gonna
like
be
you were saying
lost.
with Occupy.
Yeah.
They didn't really have a destination.
It wasn't there yet. Like, that wasn't out there yet in in the consciousness to grab and pull in and actually say, well, what is it?
What
Like,
is
let
it?
me, where can I read this?
Yeah. Where can I read it? Is it in a book or something?
Right?
Like,
It wasn't there yet.
no. And it's a lost concept in a lot of ways because, well, like we've been cultured.
Absolutely.
We've been cultured for what, 2,000 years?
Well, I mean, we've been, I would say, like, really intensely since the early 20th century.
Yeah, for sure.
Really intensely. Like, I honestly, I point back to the work of Nikola Tesla, and when that went dark, we really started to, that was like a really big turning point for humanity.
Yeah, big time.
Like,
He died alone in a 1926 New York City apartment with, I think his assistant was with him, broke and alone.
Yeah.
Brilliant man.
Right, one of the most brilliant men that ever lived. So there you go. And so for me, since then it's been really full on.
Really
like
full
this whole culture thing. Like traditions have been dying and disappearing. Wade Davis talks about it in his
the
work.
ethnosphere,
That
yeah.
the ethnosphere
Love
is
it.
falling apart and crumbling, and it's this, it's this culture. Like it is really a disease.
We're becoming a monoculture.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a mind virus.
It's the mind virus. So, but what we're seeing, so we've circled those issues. We heard some of it. We know that people are becoming more united, that there are groups popping up all over the place. We're starting to see regional cooperation.
Yes.
We're starting to see peer-to-peer systems that are popping up. They are emerging organically and naturally.
Yeah, and we're talking about at the level of governance.
Yes. But now governance itself, I mean, I think that that's a really great word, but it implies structure.
Yes.
And we aren't
We're not there yet.
there yet.
Just about. Some are.
Some people are very close, but the thing about that structure is it's not imposed in this particular side of the movement. People are finding it.
Yeah. It's amazing.
They're claiming it. They're working on it. And there's dissenters. These clowns pop up. All this sort of stuff. It's really something.
It's a journey.
It is. It's an adventure, and it's worth getting right to find unity. It's like an orchestra.
Yep.
And all of the instruments play together.
Yeah.
Sometimes a play off key, and it takes time and practice.
So
right?
this thing you're talking about, this peer-to-peer regional cooperation, like, is it realistic?
And is it already happening?
Yeah.
And I'd say yes. I'd say it is. It's starting to happen. The peer-to-peer system is naturally forming because, like you said, can we be in a leaderless system? No. People will rise to the occasion, and most people look to a leader. They need a little prompt. They're looking for solutions.
And honestly, think about when you were a kid and you were asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's that glory of like looking out to your life and saying, well, what do I want to be? But to do that now, it's fake, because if a child says, I want to be a police officer because I'm a good guy, it's like, well, no.
We just heard what
that's all about. So we want to, we want to give that back to humanity. Like, we want to have that back so you can look out to your life and say, well, what is before me? What are my choices? What are my options?
Yes.
It would be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
I got duped. I went to university.
Right.
I got duped. I went there and it wasn't at all what I thought it was going to be. I live with that. So, yeah. So here's some examples. And like, these are things, most of these I have personal experience with. I mentioned it before, the cooperative. So a cooperative business is a member-owned business. So if I'm a worker, I can choose to become an owner of the business. Very simple. Very simple. Peer-to-peer. Now I'm an owner of peers.
Right. All the peers are cooperative owners. They're all equal owners.
Equal owners.
Each voice matters.
Every voice matters.
And so there's still probably elections.
Of course, yeah. And it still works. It's a
democratic
business. It's a business inside of, the province of BC. So it's still a business. But the culture of it is slightly different.
It's a teal business, isn't it?
Yeah, well, then there's a teal business is a whole other category. Any business can be a teal business, but it just means that it is to the grassroots evolutionary potential of the business itself. Right. If I see a need in the business, I fill the need. I don't go up the chain and I've worked in the government. Like, you go up the chain forever and you never get to the top. And so you never do anything.
Right. And you never get to the top.
You never make a change. But in a teal organization, the change happens immediately. It's already done.
Right. Because you don't have to go to management and ask permission because you have control over. You go to your peers. You ask for some advice.
Yep.
And you have discretion, but you want to do a good job because, well, it's up to you.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't talk about things that I don't have experience with.
No, you have good experience.
So
You've taught me a lot about that.
I have actual experience in these things. So then what's the next one we want to talk about?
Another example.
Blockchain.
Okay.
Blockchain is a technology that is a trustless system, so it removes the middleman.
Right, and it's built on these contracts.
Built on peer-to-peer contracts. So anyhow, the a great example is real estate. If you have a peer-to-peer contract system that removes the real estate agent,
right,
then what do you need the real estate agent for?
Exactly.
Then you just need somebody
need a trustee.
You don't need them. It's done. It's
well,
dealt with.
I'm pretty sure we've got something coming online pretty soon. That'll be in one of the next episodes. That's an administrative system.
Right. So these are all. So I've been talking about the level of business. The level of blockchain is more like this sort of financial type thing. But we need to continue to evolve, right? Yeah. Because the blockchain thing it's already been corrupted. It's already we know it's not going to fall because it's not going to fit in with digital ID. So what's coming next?
Well,
governance, peer-to-peer governance.
And that gives people autonomy.
Yeah,
I think that's a natural step forward in it. So, and that's a fairly open system. I think one of the things as an example you gave, blockchain, if we look at blockchain ledger entries, they are public registered entries. Yeah. You just don't have the keys to access them.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know whose it is. It's anonymous, right? Right. And that's important. As opposed to the digital banking system, which is not anonymous. It's not. And it is attached to your person.
And you can't tell what's going on in it either. No. Acadian funds, we're going to get into this later, but the Acadian funds also go through a gazette, and you can see. That's another episode. Yeah, that's not for today. Part of what we're getting towards.
Yeah. So anyhow, it's restorative. All of this is restorative. So we know that the peer-to-peer systems are moving forward. So the next step is into governance.
Well, I have to, and I think that's one way that we can restore the golden rule of law in society, and that we can continue to find that autonomy. And allowing people to claim their power, even if they're an employee in a teal business. It's a great example.
Based in tradition, right? Yes. And so the really important thing when we're looking at providence and all of this stuff around governance is that it's based in tradition, right? So I look at this stuff with the Great Reset and I'm like, this isn't based in tradition. This is, I don't relate to it. It doesn't have any tie back to, historical providence and all of that. So so it seems kind of a strange thing to say, but the world of tomorrow is from the past.
It is. It's that amazing. They're not new systems.
No, it's amazing.
It's that glass ceiling. Yeah. But
you got to, but to break through it, this is the only system we've got. But once we break through that, we say, no, we actually don't. We have new and better systems that are based on traditions.
Right. It's true. And so I think we get there by finding a new agreement. Like I mentioned, Acadian money. That's we're going to touch on that a little as we roll out this episode. That's for another episode, like you said, Danny.
But let's talk about how do we get to a new world of tomorrow? Well, we need a new agreement. Yeah. We have to have a new agreement. That's where governance comes from. It comes from the agreement. And so currently the agreement is, well, I agree to be in this Canadian system and you agree. And so my agreement is with that government. Not me. No, me neither anymore.
No, but that was the
old way.
I'm not doing that.
Right?
No. So we need something that's as obvious as these movements are self-affirming.
Yeah.
They're life-affirming.
Yeah.
They're autonomous movements of equal individuals, of collectives in unity, and they're finding ways to resolve their conflict. But the biggest conflict that is being had isn't between the groups. It's the reason the groups exist because there's this other thing, whatever it is, and the government and all this, the culture, the government culture.
And it pops up. We've seen it in our own movement where this political thing is happening in the movement, and we go, well, that's not part of this. Can't we just resolve these conflicts? Why do we have to have politics in here?
No,
let's just resolve the conflict.
They're getting into clowning the politicians. It's terrible.
So
how can we find some remedy? I mean, there's things that are being presented today, and I'm looking at the courts. Let's look at the courts. They're supposed to be the safeguard, right? I was taught in social studies, they're supposed to be the safeguard.
Well, I'll take it to the courts. I'll take it to the courts. And that's what we're told. If the government becomes bad, the courts are the last step for democracy. Well, I think you have some experience with that.
Yeah, and so does Tamara
Leach.
Yeah, it's really something. And yes, I do. Oh man, let's say okay. So we were both put in jail by a corrupt judge. Well, I wasn't. Tamara was.
Tamara was
For
immediately
sure.
put in jail by a corrupt judge. Yes.
The judge that put me in, well, they didn't even have an arrest warrant. So we can't even say that a judge put me in jail. It was those cops. Not, I don't know what they are. RCMP? They're not even.
So we know that in the
Paramilitary?
Leach case, Judge Bourgeois has ties to the Liberal Party.
Yeah, back from 2011, ran in politics.
So the judge was biased. And I mean,
Yes.
this is expressed right in the news briefing, personal views. And the
Very
ruling.
biased ruling. Referencing the impacts, like people impacted by the convoys. She referenced our community, our police, and our city in her decision.
Yeah,
Now,
so she had a bias towards Ottawa.
absolutely. How do you say it's our thing and not be biased?
Yeah, totally.
They're supposed to be impartial, not part of it. My question, I guess, is how many of these judges or politicians breach their oaths? And like, who are they?
Well, what is their oath?
And what is their oath? And what does it mean to take an oath?
I never heard them take the oath.
Well, they didn't swear it to me. Who do they? Can they tell me what their oath is? Why is it a secret? It's not very transparent, is it? So that's not good. So are there consequences for breaching the oaths? Yeah, there's supposed to be, but like the court system's a little messed up.
Yeah, like, are they held accountable?
And I can personally attest to it. I'm still on conditions. Well, this is being recorded. I'm still dealing with it. It's
what?
absurd. Well, you heard it in that ridiculous episode of the Not So Real Life Network.
Right.
Dealing with what?
Well, like the courts or like the cops or like what? Are
How
you
about
referring to?
all of it?
Oh, okay.
That whole thing.
Right.
Oh, did you forget?
No, I'm not sure what you're referencing. Yeah.
Oh, just all of it. There's no specific point. So we need an alternative because when you're dealing with one part of it, actually that's a great kind of way to conceptualize it. What part, you ask? All of it. Because when you deal with any portion of it, you end up dealing with all of it.
Right.
And
So where do we turn to find remedy when the highest Canadian courts won't do it?
that's a really good question. And we have, like I've mentioned, Acadia. We've got some options. And I don't know anybody else who's come up with, vocalized any other options.
Or written?
Anything? Like that's competent.
There's lots of good, and I think that's partly where Acadia comes from, is it comes from the push forward of the thought in the realms of ideas, of great ideas, of moving into cooperative systems.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
But to build it into a governance system.
Yes.
That's the tricky part. How do you actually plug it into the existing systems, right?
There are no existing systems. There aren't any.
We've got a movement. Build upon it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a movement of people. We don't have a system. We need to establish something. Like we were talking about, it's 12 people to form the United States of America.
That's what happened.
Yes.
That's historical providence.
Yes. And so we can take 12 people, any people of competence.
And establish a campus.
Yes. And that's what we're working towards. So that is a viable option. And I think that in honoring the movement, if that's what's going on our end of things, if that's what we're doing here, we're forming it from a trust into a foundation. From the foundation, we will be able to release more information. And like you said earlier, that's going to be another episode for another time because this is about honoring the movement.
Yeah.
And I think it's really good to mention that stuff because we need to succeed.
Like, what's the banner or the medal that we hang on to it to honor it? If we end up with a foundation in our local collective, that is literally a badge that we hang on the truck convoys.
Literally.
That went to Ottawa.
Because now they also have a separate jurisdiction.
Yes.
Which is great. Oh, wow. It's so fun. It's fun. That's just fun. Right.
So we're going to do a whole series on this.
Yeah, we're going to do a whole series
topic.
on it. And
what are we going to cover?
Well, we're going to use that to find accountability and all these sorts of things.
What are we going to cover?
Well, let's wrap out with that because there's other things that are going on. I just want to touch on. There are movements that are distractions within that
yeah.
existing system.
It's a whole thing.
And I just want to touch on it because I want to answer your question. I want to go into that just very briefly. But I also want to say that, if we're honoring the movement, we should make note, take note,
Take notice.
take and give notice.
Give notice.
That, there are things that are distractive movements. And Action for Canada is something that looks like it's doing something. They're serving, what is it? It's
Notices of liability.
notices of liability onto an unaccountable, illegal, and corrupt system. Oh, that doesn't seem like it's actually going to do anything. So then
Well,
there's
the proof
also
will be in the pudding. Like, what has it achieved?
exactly
It
what
took
does
trucks
it achieve?
going to Ottawa to get the mandates to end. It wasn't Action for Canada.
No, not at all. And some people will jump on any bandwagon they can find.
It's to get that relief, right?
So then there's examples, class action lawsuits. So, for example, I have an attachment the provincial government has put on me, and they've said, oh, if you don't like it, there's a class action lawsuit against us. Would you like to join it? And I'm like, I will not be railroaded into your dead end. Thank you.
It's a dead end thing.
It's a dead end thing, right?
Yeah.
So
it's like a
there's-
corral. Like, where do you corral? That's how I've always seen it.
absolutely.
I'm like, what door is opening and what corral is that
You
you're going
said
into?
it earlier really well.
Yeah.
It's a one way.
One way. Yeah.
It's a one way, and there is no cul-de-sac to turn around.
No.
It's a big rig going down a one-lane dirt highway. I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah.
You're going to have trouble. But, so those things aren't really going to do it. And what is the timeline for achieving stuff? And you mentioned that with the Agenda 21. Now we've got Agenda 2032 or whatever it is. And it's funny because that's when the RCMP contract in BC expires as well.
Yeah.
Coincidental, is it not? Oh my.
Synchronicity, I look at it.
Yes, or very much strategically planned. It's like the difference between 432 hertz and 440.
Yep.
It's very subtle. So like you said, now I want to answer your question there. What do we got coming up? Best solutions, new solutions that are actually very old methods. We've got the Acadian model.
It's based in traditions.
It's based in traditions. And we're going to do a series on it. We're going to cover maxims of law. We're going to talk about sovereign independence and what that really means to be established. We're going to talk about the new agreement. Those are covenants. Covenant is an agreement. There's constitutional charters, global union, regional unions. We're going to talk about rights, real rights, and the providence of rights, the sacred mysteries of life, regional and local collectives, universities, provinces, campuses, foundations, and individual estates.
Yeah. So the really critical thing for listeners to be aware of is the beautiful thing about Acadia is that it requires of the individual to do the actual work.
Yeah, but that's the cost of freedom.
That's the cost of it.
Yeah. And it doesn't actually cost anything. You're going to love it, though. There's some people are going to be like, what do you mean I don't have to pay taxes? No, you still have to pay taxes, but not like you did. It's the same systems that we've had today.
It's slight tweaks.
Slight tweaks, but it's what we were told. It's what we were told. It's not what we found in the world today.
Yeah.
In that not so real life, in that culture.
It's what we know it's more closely related to what we know in our hearts because it's based in the traditions of the sacred mysteries of life.
Right. And we're seeing those unfold in the movement. Look at all these autonomous groups popping up.
It's beautiful.
And so to honor them, we mentioned this.
It's just like blockchain. So if you don't do the work of studying how to actually get into, quote, cryptocurrencies and all this stuff, you're not going to know how to do it.
Right.
And so you're not going to reap the benefits of it.
Right.
But if you do the work, then you reap the benefits. And so that's what it is. It's like anything. If you do the work and you reap the benefits of it.
Absolutely. And you reap what you sow.
And your community will also start to reap the benefits of the work that you do. And that's actually one of the best things for me about this.
And what we're seeing in the community.
In the movement in general.
In the movement in general, and in any community that I speak to. And it's really bringing people together, which I like. And nothing brings people together like a good meal.
Yep.
I like feasts. So, in closing on this particular episode, don't believe their narrative. It's not what they told you. And really, what's life about? It's about everybody. It's about the nurses that have been impacted, because that's our healthcare. It's definitely about the truckers, because, well, that's our supply chain. It's about the students and our educational system. It's about our seniors because they carry our traditions and our family to us in so many ways. And it's about the youth because they are our future. It's about your right to choose if you want to choose freedom. And it's like you said, Danny, it's about our community and our country. It's unity. It's about all people on one earth.
It's about our planet.
It's about our planet and our world. What world do we want to live in? What world do we want to inherit, say yes to, and which one do we want to leave to our children?
Yep.
Yeah, and the dupe stops here.
Dupe stops here.
Every single
time.
So I really want to say thanks to you guys for listening to this episode. I've hoped you've enjoyed this other episode of Cameo Radio. I'm here in the studio with Danny Honeywine. I want to give you a big thanks for coming today and doing this again.
Thanks for hosting.
I am so honored to host this, and I'm really glad that you're here with us all. Stay tuned for the next episode. This has been episode number 11 on Cameo Radio. Check out the Real Life Network on thereallifenetwork.com. Find the like and subscribe buttons. Follow us on every social media outlet out there. $5 donations goes a long way. Feel free to contribute. Members portals are coming online soon. Get on board. Stay tuned for the next episode where we're going to go into detail about some really good solutions. This is Cam McSorley. Thanks so much. Do you want to say bye to you?
Well, I'll say goodbye. I was going to say fun fact, but...
Oh, yeah. Do a fun fact, Danny. Do a fun fact.
Fun fact. This episode is episode 11, and I'm an 11. And Cam's
so
an
am I.
11.
We're both 11s.
So if you don't know what that means, have
astrologically.
fun with that.
Yeah.
And it's March 11th.
It's March 11th.